This is my husband, Lucas Becker. He's sick here for 9 years now with manganese toxicity or poisoning.
Any person working with manganese from the time that it's mined and any time that it's processed, that person is at risk.
He's going to get the fit now. I'm going to inject him with antizan for the fit. Sometimes 3 hours, sometimes it takes half an hour. It depends on how big the fit is.
Lucas Becker suffers from manganese poisoning. He says he got it by breathing in manganese dust at Samancor. He worked there for 11 years.
Once the person has inhaled it and it's inhaled a large amount of it, it gets absorbed into the bloodstream, and in certain individuals gets deposited in very specific sites in the brain, where it then causes neurological problems.
It is Voltaren for the pain.
Janetta Becker and her 2 children have had to cope with her husband's condition for the past 9 years.
We've got 2 children. My boy is now in standard 9 and my girl is now in standard 6. But when she was 5 years old, my husband became ill. On this stage, they don't have a very good relationship with him.
Usually the initial symptoms are very non-specific. Tiredness, muscle pains, joint pains, forgetfulness, depression. That is the acute stage. Following that, one can get what we call psychotic features, where a person actually develops hallucinations, delusions, and becomes psychotic. Some of the symptoms are like Parkinson's disease, where they develop shaking of the hands, difficulty walking, stiffness of the limbs, reduced expression in the face.
Okay, they can't even walk backwards. You can try it for you. Loop terug. I just want you to see that. People with manganese can't do that. You can even test that other man.
And that is the late stage of manganese poisoning, and that is irreversible. So if patients are diagnosed in that stage, even if they are taken away from the environment where they've been exposed, they will not improve. And in fact, some may even deteriorate even after they've been removed from exposure.
We visited the Samancor processing plant in Meyerton, south of Johannesburg.
To get the email that says we have to, the permission.
We weren't allowed to film inside, but were given an interview with management.
Manganese is a naturally occurring metal which is mainly used in the steel industry. We have in South Africa almost 80% of the world resources based in the Kalahari. That's where we mine manganese, and we take that from the Kalahari, bring it here at Metalloys, where it gets processed, converted into alloy, and the alloy is the end product which is used in the steel industry.
Small amounts of manganese occur naturally in the human body, and everyone is exposed to tiny doses of it in air, water, and food. However, exposure to excessive amounts may be devastating. 33-year-old Stefanus Glaus suffered permanent brain damage as a result of such exposure. An X-ray clearly shows dust on his brain.
I worked at Manko for 7 years. I was a foreman there, and I worked at all 3 plants, South, North, and West plant. It was in 2004 in October when I was at Manko one Saturday, and I was just seeing the sea, and I wanted to go to swim, and I see the dolphins, and I want to take out my jacket, and one of the guys come to me, and he said to me, what are you doing? And I said, no, here is the sea, I want to swim.
Klaus has to survive on a cocktail of 12 tablets a day.
Every day it got worse and worse and worse. The doctor gave me medication, but the medication is just there for the symptoms. When I stop the medication, it's all over again. I said, okay.
45-year-old Piet Carlson lives in the same neighborhood. He contracted manganism after working for only 9 months at the Meyerton plant as a fitter.
I only worked there for 9 months up to the 31st of March, 2003. We was walking from the conveyor belts up to the workshop, and my legs felt like jelly, and felt like my legs couldn't carry the weight of my body anymore. And so I fell down on the ground, and they picked me up there and took me to the medical station. And that's the first time I really feel ill. Then I went for an appointment at Dr. Buller's consulting rooms, and then he reckoned that most probably it could be manganese toxicity.
While we are busy with the interview, Piet suffers an epileptic seizure.
So I'll have to inject him when he gets ill, he gets Parkinson's, or take him to the doctor quickly. Or if it's not quick enough, I inject him myself. And sometimes he gets attacks in the valve, and then I'll have to take him out myself and take him to bed. He gets a bit aggressive, moody, he gets cramps in his legs, and sometimes he cries from the pain he gets.
Partykeer kry ek sommer 2 aanvalle op een dag. Maar dit drein my liggaam.
Ja. Ja, voel dit beter?
Ja, en ek sien Johan, nou trek hy mense net hulle skouers op. Ek sien ek kan nie sien dat mense kan wegkom met die goed nie.
After the break, 300 more claim poisoning. These are retrenched workers and widows of former employees of Samancor. They claim that they're suffering from illnesses which suggest manganese poisoning. They say the company retrenched them after a medical study showed high levels of manganese in their blood.
In 1999, the University of Cape Town students, they were doing the research about manganese. That's why they went to Samancor. So they tested urine, nails, hair. They took X-ray of the workers, blood, and they tested it.
I worked at Samancor for 13 years. Yes, I was at the laboratory doing sampling there until 2001 when they retrenched us. But before they retrench us, they take us they make manganese testing to us.
So Manko says this is not true.
The retrenchment process, which took place in 2001, was solely initiated because of the competition in the marketplace. In fact, what happened was we retrenched 840 people at that point in time. But because of the strategy to outsource the non-core activities, more than 50% of people who were retrenched were employed by the contractors.
I think they find out that the manganese is very high in the people because the company decided to retrench the workers after that manganese.
There was no link between the health study and the retrenchment. The retrenchment, as I mentioned, was solely based on depressed market conditions and competition. We initiated the study, we funded the study, and the study did not, it even came inconclusive.
Most of them died, so they became aware that there is something wrong with them, because every time when they meet, some of them is dead, some of them is dead. We wanted to know why, because their symptoms are the same. All the time I'm with them. The thing that I've noticed about them is their mind. They forget, every time they forget.
Manganese has been well shown to cause lung problems. People who are exposed to manganese have more pneumonia and bronchitis than other people. It's well accepted to cause brain damage, and in severe cases and chronic exposure also to affect the reproductive system in men. The brain damage is really the thing that concerns us the most, basically life-wrecking for the people who have serious manganese poisoning.
The first indication of a disease such as manganism might be a change in personality noted by his family, his wife. The guy's got a bad temper, he's got a poor memory, his mood is variable, he's depressed. These are subtle changes, but they have very, very serious consequences for the workers.
While I was still working there, that is where I started having this sickness of falling. They call it epilepsy. Yes. Then Samancor take me to medical bureau, but they didn't tell me what is a problem.
At the first signs of disease picked up through periodic examinations, we find that these workers are discharged. The first opportunity to get rid of these workers, the employers take that opportunity before the disease becomes so bad that it becomes a statistic for them that they have to deal with.
They came to see us for the first time in July of 2003. We gave them our full cooperation, and we did at that point in time ask them to bring forward, to bring to us anyone they knew who had any occupational illness. That has not taken place.
Both these women lost their husbands recently. They believe that the deaths are related to exposure to manganese dust.
Simon Ngwenya was working for Samancor for 30 years and was come ill in 1998. Then all that year, he was very ill. He talked now, but now he didn't know what he's saying. You know, and then he said your body was painful. Then at last he was like, this company doesn't give me nothing. I must struggle with the child here. I must alone. I must deal with the men. I've got no money.
In South Africa, we have literally hundreds of thousands of ex-mine workers, steel workers, vanadium, manganese workers who are suffering from chronic illness, lung disease, neurological damage, heavy metal poisoning, and a range of other conditions associated with their work.
Symptoms may be wrongly attributed to manganese poison in the early stages. In the late stages, you can't fake it.
Okay. These people can't even pull out their tongues.
What's the face?
Okay, the facial expression, you can see it's masked like a mask. There's no expression.
In the early stages, it can be very difficult and it can be confusing, and patients can be incorrectly labeled as having manganese poisoning.
But many are skeptical about the claims filed by the Sebokeng group of retrenched workers.
You know, I think it's unlikely that the majority of them are affected by manganese. There might be a small subset, but it's unlikely that manganese would lead to this kind of wide variety of diseases and deaths that are not clearly from the kind of conditions that are linked to manganese.
Sebokeng workers must keep up their campaign, and I think the demand has to be for the company to agree to the appointment of a medical panel, an independent expert panel. Once we know what's wrong with these workers, we'll be in a position to engage with the company about what kind of reasonable measures need to be taken to compensate these workers for the harm they've suffered.
After the break, who is responsible? Stephanus Glaus has come to the Joburg General Hospital for medication.
We must stand in long rows there. Every time when we must see the doctor or we must get the medicine, we must stand in long rows, and sometimes some of the months they aren't the medication.
Because he's in a wheelchair this morning, the service is quicker than usual.
And this is one in the morning.
It's been a long and stressful day. In the parking garage, Stefan Glaus has an epileptic fit.
I can't drive anymore. I can't walk alone. My wife must be by me 24 hours a day, because I can't get the fit there, and then she must eject me.
Both Piet Carlson and Glaus were working for contractors. This means Samancor is not liable for their condition.
Oh, it's from Samancor's side. They just pull up their shoulders. And I mean, I was a contractor and they haven't got a case with me anymore. Their workman's compensation only found me 35% disabled to do my work. But I can't see how I'm gonna do my work like a normal human being. They only paid me out 31,000 rand in a lump sum, and I'm receiving 1,822 rand a month, pension-wise. We must still buy these ampules from the dispensary. The Voltaren ampules is not that expensive, but the Antizin is around 295 rand for 10 ampules. So, I mean, that's quite expensive. And then this excludes the needles and injectors.
Glaus is worried. He's still waiting to be boarded.
Now I've got my report and my x-rays of my brain that I'm 100%, and now I don't know what they are going to do. If they are also going to board me 35%. If they're going to board me 35%, I don't have anything left.
The company is not a direct employer of these people. These people were employed by contractors who had to provide us some services. What we are currently doing, as I said, as neighbors, is to work through their employers so that they can be offered the support from that. There is no legal obligation for the company to be involved financially in these things.
It's very stiff.
Lucas Becker's situation is different. He was a permanent employee at Samancor. He receives a monthly pension and a 75% disability grant.
Okay, on this stage, Samancor is very good for us. They pay all our medical bills, all our traveling fees. They even pay for the psychiatrist for my and my children. So on the company's behalf, they do what they can for us.
Currently, the Department of Labour is conducting an investigation into claims of manganese poisoning at Samancor.
In South African law, the system depends entirely on policing. That is because there are no civil remedies for workers who suffer harm. In South Africa, workers are not allowed, they are barred by law from suing their employer. So if there's going to be any accountability at all on the part of employers, it has to be through the policing mechanism. And there we're depending on the Department of Labour and the Department of Minerals and Energy to enforce health and safety standards in the workplace. Now, it's almost impossible for an outsider, an inspector, to police the safe operation of a large and complex industrial plant.
We have been in operation for 54 years. And during this period of time, we have come across with 5 cases of manganism or exposure to manganese, and 1 possible case which is still under investigation.
Breathing in manganese dust is the main source of exposure. Because of this, limits have been set by government to protect workers.
The levels of exposure as specified by South Africa, we have 5 milligram per cubic meter in dust.
Our current statutory level is 5 milligrams per cubic meter of air, which is 20 times higher than the benchmark level in the United States. And certainly I think it's, what speaks for itself, it's too high, it seems. A lot of factories in which there's the potential for manganese exposure are not measuring manganese properly, and therefore they don't really have a leg to stand on.
When people join us, we take them through an induction program where all the risks associated with the business activities are described and explained to them.
I went for an induction course, but I never mentioned that there's a possibility that you can inhale the manganese dust there, and at the end of the day you're suffering from manganese toxicity.
We don't know what predisposes any individual to developing the disease. You could take 10 individuals all working for many, many years with very high blood levels, and not all of them will go on to develop the disease.
There is just there's no accountability. There is no consequence for the employer for killing people. That's it.
While medical experts across the world are grappling with this puzzling disease, victims like Stefanus Klaus, Ezekiel Motseke, Piet Carlson and Lucas Becker will never enjoy a normal family life again.
Lesie, kan jy ons hoor? Lesie? Lesie? Kan jy ons hoor?